Okay, we're going to go through a quick, hopefully a quick summary on tax increment financing. I know several of you who were at the previous presentation we did a year ago. That doesn't do anything, Dave.
No, maybe.
No, it's not. Sorry.
Okay, so stop now. It's still a little bit hard to get things going.
All right. TIF is provided for in the Illinois statutes under the Tax Increment Financing Act, which is 65 ILCS Chapter 5, Section 11, and so forth. It's one of the most effective tools available to municipalities to encourage economic development. It's one of the few economic development tools available in Illinois. It provides municipalities additional options for funding for needed public improvements. It helps local governments restore blighted areas. And blighted I use in quotes because it's a specific definition according to the Act, not necessarily that everything is falling down on itself. Jumpstart economically sluggish areas. It helps local governments attract private development and new businesses. It helps local governments make needed improvements such as new roads, sewers, or water plant mains within the redevelopment project area, which is referenced to the TIF statutes. It's also sometimes referred to as the RPA, or that also means the TIF boundaries. The improvements can often be done without additional assessments against property owners benefiting from the improvements. It allows redevelopment costs to be more comparable to green grass development sites, therefore incenting redevelopment to occur. Tax increment is the difference between the amount of property tax revenue generated before the TIF district is established and the amount of property tax revenue generated after the TIF district has new development occurring. It does not reduce the property tax revenues available to other taxing bodies. Only property taxes generated by the increment increase are available for use by and within the TIF. It is not a tax increase. This graph, again, depicts, I know I've used this before, it depicts how the TIF functions, or ideally it will function. The yellow bar is the base EAV that's established before the TIF starts. Over the 23 years of the TIF, the green triangle, any incremental revenues generated by an increase in the EAV goes to the TIF, and then after the TIF ends, the blue bar, the blue area would be the EAV that is shared by all the TIF, all of the taxing bodies, all the tax districts that overlap the TIF area. How does a TIF get established? First step is to identify an area with physical and economic deficiencies. There's an eligibility report and a redevelopment plan that are created. If necessary, a housing study is prepared. Requires holding a public information meeting to discuss the proposed TIF. There is a joint review board that is convened with representatives of the overlapping taxing districts. There is a public hearing that is required where residents and other interested parties can express their thoughts on the subject. And then finally, the TIF adopts the TIF ordinances to establish the TIF. There is no state or federal approval required. A TIF district exists for a maximum of 23 years. It can be extended to 35 years, but requires Illinois General Assembly approval. The process can be long and slow, and approvals can be difficult. TIF districts may be terminated early if all the financial obligations are paid and the village board votes to terminate the district. Eligibility class definitions include blighted, conservation, combination of blighted and conservation, or industrial conservation. The criteria for eligibility must be distributed throughout the proposed redevelopment project area, and the TIF boundaries must be equal to or exceed 1.5 acres. So it means you can't have a very small TIF, and you've got to have the eligibility criteria must be spread throughout the TIF, not just in one or two properties. You must meet the but-for requirements. Development or redevelopment would not reasonably occur without financial assistance and intervention by the municipality. The reviews and documentation criteria for eligibility, there's 3 types of TIFs: conservation, land with buildings and improvements. There's 13 criteria, 3 must be met, and more than 50% of the buildings must be 35 years of age or older. Blighted, It's improved land with buildings, it's also vacant land, and then there's the industrial conservation. Basically all of our TIFs are either conservation areas, or I believe are all conservation areas. Introduction and eligibility in the redevelopment plan. And I know some of you have looked at the documents from the previous TIFs we've established. The redevelopment plan will have an introductory section that describes the proposed TIF area and its issues, outlines the redevelopment goals and objectives, and it provides an overall framework for guiding decisions during the implementation of the TIF plan. It outlines, under the section Program Policies and Implementation, outlines the general activities and financing techniques to be used to achieve the redevelopment goals and objectives. It will have a summary of project costs, which is sometimes referred to as the TIF budget. However, and this is only a number that appears on paper. It is a maximum limit of expenditures by the 16 statutory categories allowed under the TIF Act, covering the 23-year life of the TIF. The village is not committed to financing any or all of the redevelopment project costs that are listed in the plan, and it is not a commitment to spend. It's only an authority. And again, it's covering a 23-year period. It's a budget for a 23-year period. So those numbers will be large. And again, it doesn't mean that we're going to spend that money. According to the TIF Act, the municipality must determine the need for a housing impact study. When do you need a housing impact study? It's determined based on if 10 or more inhabited residential units are planned to be displaced as part of the redevelopment plan. If you're not planning to relocate or displace any existing residential, you don't necessarily need to do a study. However, the village must still certify if the housing impact eligibility criteria are or are not met. Can a TIF district be changed? A TIF district can only be changed after it's been approved by going through a similar public process as is required to establish a TIF. It applies to the TIF boundaries, cannot be expanded or changed. However, parcels can always be removed by board action through an ordinance. And we've done that several times with existing TIFs. Redevelopment plan and project, the TIF budget cannot be changed without going through a process similar to establishing a new TIF. Where can I find TIF information? We've got a lot of information right on the village website, under our open government webpage. There are a separate page for each of the TIF districts that we have existing, and as well as we're starting to propose the new TIF, I believe we've got a page up for the new information as well. If not, it will be there soon. Cook County Clerk's Office under tax extension, they have information about TIFs within Cook County. The annual TIF reports that we are required to file with the state comptroller for fiscals 2010 through 2012 are found under the comptroller's old archive system, and any reports filed from fiscal years 2013 forward are found under the comptroller's warehouse. And you can also find information about TIFs from the Illinois Tax Increment Association. The Main Street South TIF was established in 2003 and was expanded in 2005. Its first tax year was 2004, which were the taxes that were paid in year 2005. Its last tax year will be 2026, which are the taxes paid in 2027. If you're looking at a tax bill, every property has a 5-digit tax code that identifies basically what township it's located in and the taxing bodies that are included on the tax bill. And this is the tax code that applies to any property that is in the Main Street South TIF. So if you look at your property tax bill and look for that 5-digit code, if it's 13156, it's in the Main Street South TIF. Within the village accounting records, it is village fund number 19. Sometimes we'll refer to it as the expanded Main Street South TIF or the downtown TIF or TIF number 3. It covers approximately 73 acres. The key redevelopment sites within the TIF are the former school site, the Central Middle School site, 173rd Street and 67th Avenue, North Street and South Street. There are other sites, obviously, that are eligible for redevelopment within the TIF, but these are the key sites. Some of the developments that have occurred within this TIF, all of which did not require TIF assistance. That's the expansion of what is now Bettenhausen Imports, Lakeview Townhomes at 178th Street in Oak Park. That is Citibank with its facade makeover and landscaping improvements. The Oak Park Center at 176th in Oak Park, which was the former P&R Autos, and Bailey's Restaurant and Bar. A couple pictures. Non-taxable improvements includes the Oak Park Avenue train station, Zabraki Plaza, the Carl Vogt Building Plaza, realignment of the intersection of 173rd Street and North, and the Freedom Pond Offsite Regional Detention Pond that is currently under construction. The following is an example of a 2015 tax bill for a property within a TIF. I've added highlights to show where you find the tax code, and it also, the treasurer also includes information with the estimated share of the total tax bill that goes to the TIF. However, I will note that that information is a little misleading because the information that the treasurer shows is actually for the prior year, not for the actual tax year that the bill relates to. Here's the bill in its entirety. Tax code is found up here at the top, and then amongst the detailed line, this is a second installment tax bill, by the way, where you have the full detail of all the taxing bodies. It'll have a line in there for the TIF, and the next slide is actually shows a little zoom enlarged view, and it shows Main Street South TIF, and it shows what dollars of the tax bill are going to the TIF and what percentage that represents, and also what was for the prior year. Again, I will note that information is a little misleading because it is based off of the 2014 allocation, not the 2015, because actually in this particular tax year, even though it shows that there's money going to the TIF in 2015, that is not true, because 2015's EAV for the district was below its frozen base, so the TIF received no tax dollars at all for tax year 2015. Proposed and pending developments, you've got the Tinley Park Place on North Street. It was proposed in between 2003 and 2005. That project did not move forward. However, there are other concepts that have been received in recent years for the North Street location, and those are under various stages of review. We have the boulevard at Central Station, the South Street project, which is proposed. Again, it's pending. Blackstone Lofts on South Street at 67th Court. That's the former Bremen cash store site. Again, proposed and pending. We've received concept proposals for the former school site at 67th Avenue and 173rd Street, and of course we're currently looking at locations for the Harmony Square Community Entertainment Plaza under our branding plan, and there's an open house that will be held December 6th right here in this room in the Carlson Center between 5:30 and 8:30. This is showing the EAV for the Main Street South TIF since its inception, and I've added the highlight here that in 2015 its EAV, you can see it's at a low point here, was actually below the frozen base, so there was no increment generated at all for this year, which is depicted here in the revenue that was generated. There is none in 2015. In fact, because of the way that the county allocates tax dollars, we actually owe the county back money for because of 2015 being a zero EAV, zero year. As it stands right now, with the 2016 tax year available, the increment has crept up just ever so slightly. from the prior year and is back above the frozen base, and the increment now represents about 2% of the total value. That 2% translates to EAV of about $220,000. Not very much. And the Main Street South TIF now currently has 9 remaining tax years in its 23-year life. It has cumulatively produced about $5.4 million over 14 years, and there has been no TIF assistance been provided to any developers up to this point in time. The Main Street South TIF has been hit hard by the recession, and the outfall effects on real estate values have resulted in 7 consecutive years of falling EAV. Any of the redevelopment projects that had previously been proposed either were delayed or were terminated. Property values have also decreased due to demolitions in anticipation of redevelopment that did not occur. And the village also owns, when the village owns property, it is tax exempt, which also impacts the TIF EAV. And part of this is because the village has assembled and land banked properties in an attempt to encourage redevelopment that also has not moved forward as originally expected. So all of these factors have contributed to the falling EAV that we've seen in this TIF. Again, there's only 9 tax years remaining. There is typically a 2-year lag between new development when it actually occurs and when it's reflected by the assessor in the tax rolls. If a project started today, it would produce at best maybe 7 years of incremental tax revenue. The tax base is currently close to 0, and projected increment from proposed developments will not be sufficient to support needed public improvements or to provide enough funds to support a meaningful incentive to encourage redevelopment to occur during the rest of the remaining life of the TIF. The new Bremen TIF proposal. The TIF includes much of the original town known as the Village of Bremen, dating to 1853. The historic New Bremen name was derived from the name of the local post office, which is what the community was commonly known as from 1854 to 1891. It will replace the existing Main Street South TIF, and the Main Street South TIF will be terminated. It is not an additional TIF. It's basically restructuring the existing TIF. It includes additional properties along Oak Park Avenue that are expected to require assistance before redevelopment or improvements will occur. It resets the time clock. It establishes a new 23-year life cycle. A longer period will allow a longer period to generate additional incremental revenues and the greater ability to generate sufficient revenues to support needed public improvements and redevelopment assistance that is required. It will reset the frozen property base, adjust the property values that have been reduced due to demolition. It adjusts for properties that have become tax exempt since the Main Street South TIF was established. It will, it includes additional properties requiring redevelopment assistance, such as for fire suppression improvements, handicap accessibility, landscaping improvements, and non-conforming uses under our zoning regulations. Patrick will talk in a little bit here about the Oak Park Avenue playbook, which is structured to address some of these issues. The village has already met with representatives of both the elementary and high school districts, that's District 146 and 228, regarding the plan to terminate the Main Street South TIF and create the new Bremen TIF, and to receive their input and support. And as provided in the TIF statutes, the school districts can request annual per pupil reimbursement for new students created by the TIF if they are incented during the life of the TIF. And feedback from both of the superintendents has been positive to our efforts here, because they also see the impact within their district boundaries. The proposed TIF area looks very similar to the existing Main Street South TIF. Again, there are taking in some additional properties along Oak Park Avenue. Here's the timeline for the approval process. Started back in August. In November, the last meeting, tomorrow night's meeting, we'll have the resolutions regarding the feasibility analysis and the reimbursement of expenses. and also the notice of availability of the interest parties registry. In December, following the expected timeline, we'll have the draft feasibility study to be received by the village. We'll provide comments back to Ellers, and the final plan is expected to be available around December 19th. A public meeting date will be established at that time, and again, the availability of the report will be announced. It will be put up on our website. A public meeting notices will follow, which will be mailed to the overlapping taxing districts, anybody that's on the interested parties registry, and residents and taxpayers that are within the proposed TIF area. In January, for basically the second week of January, there will be a public meeting that will be held. In about the third week of January, the ordinance setting up the joint review board and establishing the public hearing date will be approved by the board. Again, following that will be mailing of notice of the JRB meeting and the public hearing to overlapping taxing districts and the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. And again, this will be put onto our website as well. February, we'll publish the first notice regarding the public hearing and mailing the notice of the public hearing to those within the TIF, and I believe within 500 feet collar around the TIF. Around the first week of February, the Joint Review Board will meet, and a second notice will be published regarding the public hearing around February 12th, and the Joint Review Board recommendation would be received is expected to be received no later than the end of February. In March will be the public hearing. The board will also pass the ordinances to terminate the Main Street South TIF. And then in April will be approval of the ordinances to create the new Bremen TIF. And the following couple of slides are about the Oak Park Avenue, the Oak Park Playbook, which Patrick will go into a little more detail.
Thank you very much, Brian. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Patrick, and I solve problems. I was hired by the village to be your economic development manager. One of the first things that the mayor did whenever he took office was he said, how can we fix Oak Park Avenue? There's a lot of vacant buildings. Why are they vacant? So we started reviewing the policies and came up with a couple different concepts that we could use, do grant programs to kind of counter some of the things that are in the legacy code. So you guys put together this legacy district, this legacy plan. There's a code involved that is a bit of a hurdle for a lot of businesses to try to invest in. So we tried to come up with some grants that might help offset that. One of them is a smaller grant, $5,000 grant, which I believe that does not exist now, correct? I think it was something that was already written but never put into place. So it's something that was on the books to come out, but it's to help encourage signage, some nice signage going down that's more pedestrian friendly and that you can see as you're driving. You'll see some signs as you're driving by in your car. They're more like facing the building itself, not actually kicking out. So this is a smaller grant that can encourage some signs for our current businesses and future ones. The other one does exist now. It's the Façade Grants. And this is just an ongoing, currently what we have in place does not have design standards. So we wanted to come up with a design guide that would actually say, here's the kind of design we're looking for along. Because right now, I mean, you can come in and I assume ask for whatever you want. It's just up to the Main Street Commission to say yay or nay on if you're going to receive the funds. We'd like to have some kind of formalized design standards that just matches what we're looking for in Tinley Park going up and down Oak Park Avenue. The biggest one that I've ran into, there's buildings up and down Oak Park Avenue, and the thing is if you invest over a certain amount of money into some of these properties, it kicks in a different style of zoning. So right now, if it's zoned and it's a commercial, if it goes over 50% of the investment, it kicks it over to residential. And there's people that have been interested in going into certain areas, but once they realize that there's not a sprinkler system, it's kind of like, I don't want to mess with that. It's something that we require, that the state requires. So we said, how do we offset it? Let's incentivize it. Same thing with the ADA requirements. Because some of these buildings are pretty old and they're not up to code. So if you touch the bathrooms, you got to change everything. So I thought no one's going to touch these unless there was a way that we can offer some kind of incentive. The code grants is one of the incentive programs. The next one is kind of out of the box, and not a lot of villages do this, but it'd be retail grants. We came up with a list. If it matches a certain type of retailer like we'd like to see downtown, we would help build out the interior. So like the biggest example I've got is Springthorpe Hall. You know, it's just wide open right now, nobody's in there. If we can get a music shop in there, we can say we'll give you a matching grant up to $35,000 to help you put in your walls. It's just whatever we can do to get the vacancies to go away. Because right now these buildings are assessed at a vacancy rate, so it's much lower than it would be if there were people inside these buildings. So if we can use a grant in order to offset that, these all do have requirements that they stick around for 3 years, I believe, and it's a graduated, so if they leave early, they're supposed to get it back. If they take the sign with them, I don't know, maybe we'll go steal it back. I'm not sure how you would do the sign. But there are different ways, mechanisms that we're going to have in place in order to take it. And then the other one, last one, is landscaping grants. Going up and down Oak Park Avenue, there's in the public right-of-way, we've got really great landscaping. And in some areas, like Bailey's, has awesome private landscaping. I'd like to get nice landscaping going up and down the entire thing because that is our downtown. So we can offer smaller $1,000 residential grants for some of the homes that are along Oak Park Avenue and $5,000 for commercial. I think it'd be a nice grant that we could use to just beautify the entire corridor. The idea would hopefully be able to get Brad to allocate some funds next budget, so around May, that we could.
It's the board to allocate.
Sorry, the board. Let me request Brad a certain amount. The board to allocate up to what do we say, $350,000. The idea would be to get 10 a year for 2020. So I wanted to have the whole 2020 concept. Abe doesn't think I can do it. I'm gonna try and pull it off. But the idea would get 10 grants for the next 2 years, so we can do 20 grants. And really along Oak Park Avenue, if you look at the vacancies, I think that would really breathe some life back in and beautify the entire pool. Now I'll turn it back over to Ben.
The last thing I want to touch on here tonight is the Comptroller's annual TIF report. State statutes require that we file a report every year that a TIF exists. I've kind of taken a sample report and I've got it up here. Now the images of the report itself will be a little small, hard to see, but I'm not going to focus too heavily on that specifically. Again, the most recent reports are available on our website. They are readily available. Also available through the Comptroller's office. Again, it's required to be completed by within 180 days after the close of the fiscal year. There can be an extension requested. There are penalties if the report is filed late. Copies are provided in electronic form to all of the overlapping taxing bodies. That's all of the other districts that are affected by the TIF, and also to the state comptroller. The report must be distributed to the taxing districts prior to the annual joint review board meeting, and every year, again following the close of the TIF and the TIF report, there is a joint review board meeting held, inviting all of the overlapping taxing districts to meet and receive an update on what has occurred and occurring with the TIF, each of the TIFs. And again, the report is included in our open government transparency disclosures through our website. The first page of the report includes basic information about the TIF, includes the location of the TIF, what county it's located in, the fiscal year of the report, the TIF administrator contact information, which is me, and it includes the first attestation regarding the accuracy and completeness of the report in accordance with the TIF Act. In all total, there's 4 different attestations that take place in the TIF report regarding the accuracy and completeness of the report. Section 1 provides information about the TIF itself, the official name of the TIF, when the TIF was created, and when the TIF will end. That's kind of what it looks like. Section 2 contains a summary of the type of TIF, and it also includes a checklist, which also serves as an index to the other types of documents that will be included as attachments in the annual report. Again, kind of hard to see, but Just again, basic information at the top, and then this checklist of the different types of documents that are either included or are not included with the TIF report. Section 3.1 includes kind of a checkbook summary for the fiscal year. It includes the beginning balance plus receipts, and also a reference to the cumulative revenues over the life of the TIF to date, less expenditures, which is the total is carried over from section 3.2, and an ending balance. It also identifies any potential surplus that may be available within the TIF, which is carried over from section 3.3. A negative number in this area is okay during the life of the TIF because it means that there's other obligations that are out there. If authorized, a surplus could be paid to the other taxing bodies that overlap the TIF area. This is what that section looks like. And again, down here at the bottom, it shows whether there's a surplus or deficit for that TIF. Section 3.2a contains details of the expenditures for the fiscal year. The expenditures are listed and broken down into the 16 allowable expenditure categories under the TIF statutes. The total of this detail carries back to the 3.1 section that we just went through. The next couple pages is, again, the 16 categories. Section 3.2b contains details of anyone who was paid $10,000 or more during the fiscal year. And it includes details of who was paid, the purpose of the payments, and the total amount that was paid. Section 3.3 contains a breakdown of the balance of the special tax allocation fund at the end of the reporting period. It's required to be completed if the TIF year ends. If the fund balance under section 3.1 is positive, it identifies existing and potential future commitments against the fund balance, and is used to determine if a surplus exists that may require payment to overlapping taxing bodies. Again, a negative number is okay during the life of the TIF. Surplus calculations carry over to section, again, back to 3.1. This is what the section looks like. Again, it shows any debt issuances that exist and the amount that are designated for the TIF, and other project costs that may be outstanding or to be committed. Section 4 contains details of any property and real estate that was purchased by the municipality within the TIF boundaries during the fiscal year. It's only completed as necessary. Oftentimes it will be blank because we're not acquiring property every year. It will include the address of where the property is located, the approximate size of the property, and the total amount paid, and basically sold the property to the village, who was the previous owner. That's what it looks like. Section 5, it is a summary of all of the projects that have been undertaken within the TIF boundaries. It identifies the project itself, the amount of private and public investment for the project, the total amounts paid from November of 1999, when the TIF reporting was first required, to the end of the fiscal year, that cumulatively, estimate of what is expected to be spent during the next fiscal year, the estimate of the total project costs through completion of the project. It calculates a ratio of private to public investment for each project and a summary total of all projects. The higher the ratio, the greater the private investment compared to the public investment. Ideally, it should be a positive number. This is what it looks like. Ours will have a couple pages of projects listed for each of the different TIFs, with the exception of, right now, of the Mental Health Center, which only, I believe, has one project listed. Sections 6, 7, and 8. Section 6 includes the EAB for the TIF, the frozen base, and the most recent EAB information that's available during the fiscal year. And I will generally also make a notation next to that number indicating what tax year that number relates to, that EAB number. It includes detail of any distributions of surplus to other taxing bodies that overlap the TIF boundaries. Section 7 includes information about job creation. It's optional if the information is gathered or is available. Unfortunately, I don't have that information available with our reports right now. Section 8 includes a general TIF, description of the TIF boundaries, the detailed legal description, a map of the TIF boundaries. The latter two items are only supplied with the initial TIF report filed for a TIF district and are typically not repeated in subsequent TIF reports. Again, this information is all available on our open government page for each TIF. Again, this is what that page of the report looks like. Following that are the series of attachments that I referenced in section 2. Attachment B is a certification by the Chief Executive Officer. That's the mayor attests to the municipality's compliance with the TIF statutes. That's what it looks like. Attachment C is again another certification from legal counsel attesting to the municipality's compliance with the TIF statutes. So that's attestation number 3. That's what it kind of looks. That's what it looks like. Attachment D is a statement of activities. It's a narrative, describes the projects that have been undertaken under the TIF in greater detail that related to section 5 that I talked about earlier. Each project that is referenced is found related to the summary, financial summary information provided in section 7. This is kind of what it kind of looks like for a TIF, several pages long. Attachment 8 is minutes of any joint review board meetings held during the fiscal year. Typically, there's only one, but there's no prohibition that there couldn't be more. Attachments K and L is an audit report. If the TIF revenues have cumulatively exceeded $100,000, a separate audit report is required each year. And I've noted here also that the financial information for each TIF is also included in our comprehensive annual financial report for the village as well. Attachment L is the compliance report. Again, it's an attestation by the auditors that we meet the TIF criteria, TIF statutes. So that's the 4th attestation that occurs in a TIF report. And this is what that report looks like. Attachment M is a list of any intergovernmental agreements that are in effect with relation to the TIF that the municipality is a part, and the accounting of any monies transferred or received by the municipality during the fiscal year pursuant to those intergovernmental agreements. And that concludes our presentation. If there's any questions, glad to entertain them.
I'm sorry. I have a lot of questions. Just so I understand, because the way I always understood it, I thought we let the money build up, and then at the end we had this balance of money we could use. But we basically spend it as we go through. And you're saying we could give out more. Oh, this is timed, like?
Why do you time this?
This isn't even a real meeting. You guys didn't even post this.
Oh. No, we don't.
I mean, seriously.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, this is just.
I give up.
This is just a
You know
workshop.
what? Seriously.
Go ahead, Diane.
Well, anyway.
So you're saying that you feel it would be okay to give out more money than we've actually collected? Isn't that a little gambling with our money? I mean, I don't like that at all.
Maybe I'm not understanding your question.
So you're saying that it could go negative. A TIF could go negative, meaning we must have committed
No,
more.
I'm sorry. Let me clarify that. And get this off of the screen there, Patrick. Okay.
No, you gotta say it in 4 minutes. Hurry up. No, just say it.
All right, well,
I'd like to see you guys do this stuff.
It wasn't my fault.
He knocked it off. He said we're okay.
Let me zip back here.
That had to do with the South Street. That's because we tore down all the buildings and so there's no taxes coming in. And so,
All right.
So the EAVs.
So this is section 3.3 of the TIF report, and that's saying, it starts up. It says this is the money that I have on hand at the end of the report, end of the fiscal year. So in this report, there's $5.7 million in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
I've got outstanding obligations to pay debt service on bond issues that are related to the TIF.
Because we, like incentive. Like,
No, bond issue, now, and the example that I'm using here is the example that I'm using here is the Oak Park Avenue TIF, the convention center TIF.
Okay,
So we issued bonds to help us build the convention center.
okay.
Not to give to out, we didn't issue bonds to help anybody else. Those were bonds for us to build the convention center.
But we don't make any money.
No, but.
I know, so we did.
But
yeah,
we paid to build the building. So we have to pay that debt service. And we're using the TIF dollars to pay that debt service. So it doesn't cost the general taxpayers anything
But
additional.
as long as you bring it up, what do we get out of that TIF? I mean, because we built it, we paid the management company to run it, and so how much over what we've spent on it did we get in revenue from those taxes? The extra taxes that we're earning on their
We
room?
collected 60 million in TIF funds from that TIF. It wasn't just from the convention.
It's not just TIF, you get hotel taxes, restaurant.
Right.
That's where Tinley gets
Tax
most of
years.
our money.
No, but
Yeah.
for that convention center, so we're earning the taxes on the hotel?
The hotel taxes, obviously, people are spending, and people that are in town, if they spend money in town, will get taxes on that. I don't know that it's something you can exactly
Okay,
measure.
I got it.
Dave, the
But,
hotels
yeah.
are very good for Tinley.
They are.
I think is
Yes.
that our biggest source of revenues, hotels or the car dealers?
Car dealers.
The car dealers are
Yeah.
above hotels, but the
Absolutely.
hotels are second in source of
They're-
revenue, third, but they are very good.
Well,
But we just don't know about the convention center. We just don't know as citizens how much we put into it. Did we get any?
the hotels are successful
Yeah,
because of the
because
convention.
of the
Because
convention.
Right, I mean, that's
But
why.
I mean,
you
but the
have-
hotels
yeah,
are
right.
packed the hotels are sold out when we have concerts, right?
Yes.
So regardless of the
But there's
convention
only,
center. But we don't have enough
of recent
hotels.
years, 20
Right.
to 25 concerts in a season.
Right.
So
Now,
there's 365 days in a year.
I know, I can't wait till we start doing
25
all
nights
this extra stuff, and we're
doesn't
gonna fill them all
doesn't
up
fill
the
up
rest of the
a
year.
hotel.
Brad,
Okay.
with a question. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just
So anyway,
want to see this negative.
so again, we issued bonds to build the convention center. Those bonds, beyond the end of this fiscal year, still has debt service that we've got to pay. So
Right.
that's an obligation against whatever money I've got in the bank and any future revenue we've got.
So what happens if we didn't make enough money? Say the hotel and the convention center busted, then
That's-
what? How
that's
do we
what-
pay all that stuff out? We gotta,
Comes out of our.
then we just have to raise taxes. We still have to pay it all out, right? Regardless,
Potentially,
they all have to
yes.
pay.
At the end of the day, yes. If for God knows what reason
Maybe a
that-
crash in the market,
that
people.
if that occurred, yes. At a point, once we ran out of TIF money, the taxpayers in general would be on the hook to pay off those
That's
bonds.
fine. Yeah, I got you.
But again, during the life of the TIF, we're saying we're expecting the TIF to be able to pay those bonds. Okay, so that's an obligation against the TIF. And we've got the agreement for the management of the facility. We've got an obligation under the agreement to pay in future years for that. So we take and deduct those against the money that we have on hand, and that puts us into a negative position. It's only on paper. Again, we're not spending more money than we've got, but it's just saying that even though I've got $5.7 million in the bank, I've got commitments against that money.
Right.
That's
But we
not free.
haven't
That's
earned
not
enough.
free money.
But I mean, if we still haven't earned enough money to pay it up, that's why it's negative.
That's why it's negative.
It's real,
That's right.
but it's not
That's
just
right.
on paper. It's real.
But again, that's why I'm saying the negative is not a bad thing. It's just saying,
Well, to me, it's bad.
well,
But, yeah,
it's
In a
not.
personal check.
nobody wants to see negatives
It's
at the
not-
bottom of a financial statement.
And
I
again,
get it. I get it.
that's why
But it's so risky.
that's why I made a point to say the negative is not a bad thing in this circumstance, because it's just
You're
saying.
losing me on that one.
What were
To
you
me, it's-
saying about
I don't-
us owing something to Cook County?
With the Main Street South TIF, and I don't know that it gets a little complicated, but the way that Cook County distributes the tax money to us for the TIF, they use the prior year allocation percentage for allocating the first installment. So what happened in 2015 is they allocated us a share of tax dollars from what we received on the first installment tax bills based on the prior year allocation percentage. But 2015 was negative. The EAV was negative, so there should not have been any money that we received at all. But they gave us money anyway. So we have to pay that money back. Yes, because they haven't demanded that we repay it. I know that
No, do we still have that money or did we spend it?
No, we did not spend it. Because I knew that I wasn't entitled to that money because, again, because of the way I understood how the system works, it's like, wait a minute, I shouldn't get this money. So, but now I do owe it back to the county at some point. And I have not spent it for something else, so I have it readily available to pay for it when they ask for it.
Hey, Brad, how do these TIFs differ from, let's say, a slush fund, so to speak? I mean,
Nothing.
as far as moving funds around willy-nilly, I mean, how do you differentiate the two?
I absolutely despise the term slush fund because that should not.
No, it's got a negative connotation, but I mean,
It sounds like it's something illegal that's being done.
But,
Right, and that
Which
is
we're not
not.
how does it
illegal.
differ, though?
Right.
Could you, lay out
This is legal.
differentiation, so to
There's
speak?
there's less
We are
restrictions.
We are following the TIF statutes and what is allowable. And yes, the TIF statutes allow us to transfer money between TIFs. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
But yet again, it is legally allowed, and those transfers are authorized and approved. They're not just done willy-nilly.
So I'm going to segue off of Eric's comment there, and let's get an exact count of how much money came out of South Street 3, and I'm guessing 2, that went into 5. And does that show up on last year's TIF report, or is that still cooking?
Some of that, actually, now that most of that, I don't. Actually,
There's $5.2 million for the pond that I can barely kayak. Okay, and that money came from 2 and 3. Yes or no?
No, it came from all.
It came from 2 and there's money. There are monies that came from 2 and 3.
How much came out of 2?
I don't know off the top of my head. I don't have that.
I'm going to expect an answer to that question. If not, at the
Michael,
next meeting tomorrow,
Michael,
I will literally file a FOIA on. I will swear to God, I will go back to 2006
Michael,
and start getting answers.
Why not? Can we just?
Can we be civil here, please?
Yeah. Can we just? We will answer the questions we can tonight. It's not fair to expect him to know a dollar amount off the top of his head. We'll get
you
the
all
answer.
as my
Yeah.
witness,
Mike,
right here.
Yeah,
it's for now. I don't know if this would help you. That's like types.
Maybe one thing, Brett. Oh, I'm sorry.
But this
Go ahead.
doesn't show
Go ahead.
how
Go
the
ahead,
money
go ahead.
moved from 2
Go ahead.
and
I was
3 to
just gonna
5.
say, because I've been on
tough.
these sites, it is difficult. Like I think we'd all feel better if we. Is there a summary in total? Like I get it that I could probably take all these reports and piece it all together, but it would be helpful so we don't believe that there's slush funds and all this stuff. If there was a summary to say, here's how much money that came in, here's what went,
Where
just.
did all these?
That's what this report does.
But in total, all together, all the
We're
years.
looking for all the.
Okay, let me give a concrete example. 2006, $425,000 is paid out to the middle property on North Street. Does that show up as an individual line item anywhere in these TIF reports?
Yes, we paid out money
Yeah.
to purchase property, and it would have shown up. It would have shown up in section.
I have read these here.
It would have shown up in.
And there are.
It would have shown up in section. Section 3.2A,
hundreds.
and it would have shown up
I know,
in
but
section
doesn't it have to be over a certain
3.2B.
amount?
No, he has everything.
Everything.
So now going
No.
back to tomorrow's meeting, agenda
what I
item
thought I heard him
16,
say.
$10,622 were taken from South Street for tax abatement. What category does that show up?
I'm sorry.
Sure it's under 10.
Look at the agenda tomorrow.
You're talking about the levy?
Yeah.
Yep.
Tax
The
abatement.
levy, there's a,
TIF money's
Yes.
coming.
yeah.
Yes, and that's we talked about that. 173rd Street and North Street, the intersection where it was an offset intersection. We straightened it out so that it's a regular plus sign T intersection or plus sign intersection. We were issuing bonds at the time. and we included that project as part of the bond issue. So the bond, that portion of the bond issue is being paid for by the TIF for that project, and that project only.
Okay, I just have general questions. If you don't have the answer, trust me, you can get back to me.
We'll get back
on
to
that.
you.
What'll help me on what you call the slush fund? Okay, Tinley Park Mental Health Center. This, to me, it's like the perfect beginning because it's blank, right? We have spent $1 million so far out of the general fund for all these surveys that should be thrown in the garbage. But anyways, that $1 million is not put on any of the reports.
That's correct, because it was not spent out of the TIF.
Once it's
But it's
spent on a
TIF
TIF,
related.
then we'll be able to put on a TIF report.
Yes, it relates to the same area, but we did not pay for that out of the TIF. Now,
Right.
one of the items that's on the agenda tomorrow night is for reimbursement, that our expenses for Ellers to study the feasibility for the new Bremen TIF, and any other expenses that we may incur in relation to looking at the TIF. Presuming that we move forward and create the TIF,
Right.
we can reimburse ourselves for those expenses later on when the TIF has money.
Do we plan that if
If
anything happens with the mental health center, like we get the sports complex or something, will we get that $1 million back into our general fund?
Well, when we created that, with every TIF that we created,
right.
it's conceivable that yes, if it's successful,
The board would have to decide. It's not a question of it can, but obviously it's until you have revenue there, it's kind of a moot point.
I
So
agree,
at some
but-
point, the board can decide, yes, we want that $400,000 reimbursed.
Right, I agree, it's just that it's not anywhere except for item, was it 18, 17, or the project
It's in the village
number.
budget.
It's in the
The
budget.
village budget, right.
But I've had to bother Brad each month. I said, give me an update, give me an update. And he's, they send it to me. What, am I the only one tracking on an Excel spreadsheet the cost so far?
Well, I think if your question is the $400,000, yes, that would be TIF eligible. The board could decide when revenues are generated, we want to reimburse it. They could decide, we've got better things we want to spend it on.
Right.
So, I mean, it wouldn't make sense to show up in any TIF report because at this point, it's not really determined to be a TIF expenditure.
Well,
So
I
that's
look
why
at it
it's
as,
yeah.
And again, any expenditure has to fall within the 16 allowable categories. Now, those expenses that we're talking about
That one would.
qualify, certainly, they qualify within the 16 categories, but again, it's up to the board and to decide later on that we actually want to reimburse.
right, but it's open government, if you will, that there's a list saying, we've already spent $1 million on the Tinley Park Mental Health Center. There's, how many million did we spend on Main Street? How many on this and that? How much have we given the developer for South Street already?
We have not given the developer anything directly on South Street.
Directly, yes. I would like to expound on that
Well,
because the pond is a
that's
direct
not-
benefit to that development.
We haven't, I think if the question is if there's been any incentive agreement there isn't. I mean, there's one.
Certainly hope not. because
There's
that
one
meeting
being
was canceled.
negotiated.
The 2012-14, what are we up to? I think close to $5 million in incentives to him.
Yeah.
Then we have the pond, and I don't think we need 167. I know this is for another fight, but we don't need 167 apartments on South Street.
Yeah, again, you're right. I think that is a question for another day.
Yes. But
That's not the night's topic.
Okay,
But it will be.
Could
Okay,
I
then.
go off of that topic then with the South Street? Does the extension of this TIF that we're talking about tonight and what's going for vote, does this have anything to do with the South Street project securing financing? Because South Street's they've been told they can't secure financing unless if we extend this TIF. And then they're expecting up to and over $6 million in incentives from the TIF. They're also expecting $1 million in properties, and we've already put in a Panduit Pond on this. We've also changed our building code so they could build that building 20% cheaper. how much longer are they gonna bend us over until we do something and maybe go buy them out and get a real developer in there?
Yeah, we
They
need
can
a
put
true
something in there that we need.
So let me just kind of, in general, so, and I think Brad,
This meeting tonight is about South Street securing,
is.
securing
Yeah.
their financing. Is it or is it not?
no, we're not,
This
I'm
has
not
nothing
getting
to
into, we can talk all day whether we agree with apartments or what the
We're
incentives
talking
are.
about our TIF funds going to South Street development.
Well, let me explain. Okay, so I think as Brad explained, the reason, you know, the TIF that was started in whatever year it was, 2002, 2003. Okay. The intention was to have a lot of these downtown mixed-use projects. And in a typical development, and again, you can agree that an apartment complex is good, you can agree that it's not good.
Yeah, we'll stay off of that.
But to get into an incentive package that's going to basically financially work, you need more than the time that we have left in the TIF. And that's not just for South Street, that's for if this Bremen
Anybody
TIF store
else?
project, whatever else happens, there's not enough time left. So it's not an issue of what we're doing this just for South Street. We're doing this because we want, and again, you can disagree, but the board's goal is to make it a basically a more pedestrian-friendly, transit-oriented downtown with more people, and without more time in the TIF, it's frankly not feasible.
Okay.
And that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I agree. Okay, with that being said, with the with the Oak Park Avenue TIF, okay, that's the TIF that the convention center's in. We took in $72 million so far as of 2016 in TIF funds. $60 million came from that TIF. That TIF is expiring next year. Now, why don't we extend that one? Is it because the superintendents don't want us to extend it? Or why don't we extend the one that we make the money off of?
Well,
That we
Yes,
that
let
we
me
also
explain.
It's not about making money.
yeah, no, and we're not.
I could say that though. Why don't we?
It's not. Well,
It's fine, but why don't we? That's
But
that's a good source of
ultimately
revenue.
with the TIF, it's about achieving the objectives.
Well,
And
yes.
That's the
But all,
key.
a
That
lot
has
of our
been a-
TIF funds from
And
all
we
of
have
our
largely
TIFs
achieved the objectives
went
that
over
we
to
set out
build
to
the
do with
convention
the Oak
center.
Park Avenue TIF.
Okay.
Have we regained enough from that, or should we extend that TIF? Should we extend that TIF? Because that's the TIF that we put all our money into.
See, I'm actually agreeing with Mike Claus, right? This is on the record. No, I don't.
I'm
So-
going to agree to end that one because
Yes.
that is the one successful TIF, I guess
Yes.
you can argue, of the 5.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to say, you know what?
But
Here,
once it's
it's one and done. We got. I should
Okay.
say one and done because there's 5,
Once
but
it's-
that is the one that should not be extended.
once it's ended, where do those funds go?
That's where it's supposed to go. To
Which
all
is
the
where?
taxing bodies.
Yeah, that's my, was
So
my
To
question.
MWRD,
Yeah.
to the schools,
Okay.
to whatever.
Okay,
So let me just try to answer part of it.
It
Okay,
leaves
so
Tinley.
I think Mike hit the nail on the head. The reason why we're not looking at expanding that, it has been a successful TIF. The goal of the TIF, you can argue about whether you agree, is to create new development that expands the tax base.
Yeah.
That has been, if that is the measure of success, it's been an overwhelming success, and there's no reason to extend it.
Okay.
That has not been the case, as Brad's little chart shows, with the downtown TIFs. And we're back to where the assessed value.
If I were to pull up
Yes.
the charts for
Yes.
the Oak Park Avenue TIF, they would look completely different
Yes.
to what we showed here tonight on Main Street South. And again, we've largely achieved the goal that we wanted to achieve. Now there are there's parcels by the convention center that we would love to have seen redeveloped during the life of the TIF that won't happen, but that by itself is not enough of a reason to say we want to extend it.
yeah, see, my point is, we took the TIF money from Old Tinley, my neighborhood, sent it out there to build that.
No.
And now the $5 or $6 million that we're generating from TIFs there, we can't use to build Old Tinley.
But again,
Use it for some of the bonds.
keep in mind that the Oak Park Avenue TIF, the tax dollars, the incremental tax dollars that were generated by that TIF are generated only by the properties that are located in that TIF. None of that money came from you. None of that came from you.
None of the TIF money came from me.
None of Oak Park Avenue TIF money came from you. None.
I think it's a misnomer to call that, let's call it convention center TIF. When you say Oak Park Avenue, I think there's some confusion.
I'm in
Well,
South
that's
Street
the
TIF.
name, that's
I
the
know.
official name of the TIF, and yes, we do
That's
refer
why
to it as the
we're
convention center TIF because that is what people commonly identify has occurred, and that's probably the biggest project that we had there.
I could have sworn there was part of the last meeting where they took some money from the downtown area to pay off a bond or
Yes, we did.
Or
Yeah, again, the abatements,
yes.
and as I explained at the meeting, when the bonds were issued, they were issued as general obligation bonds, which means that they're backed behind the full faith and credit of the village, which ultimately means that it's against all of the taxing property within the village. And the county clerk, when we issued those bonds, is given a schedule that says, for each year that those bonds exist, this is the amount of money that you need to levy for taxes to pay those bonds off. For the annual debt service on those bonds. Levy this amount of money. It's like if you took your home mortgage and added up a year's worth of payments, that's the amount of debt service that I need to levy each year to pay that debt. Okay? So the county clerks have that record already in hand. If we did nothing, the county clerk would automatically levy those taxes. We are saying we want to take monies from the TIF to pay those bonds, so don't levy that amount because we've already got that money taken care of.
And that would have been added to our tax bill.
And so if we don't do the abatement, it would be added to our tax bills. We didn't want that because we're using the TIF monies to pay that. We don't need to have it added to the tax bills. That's what the abatements are about. Is we've come up with other pockets of money to pay that debt service without going and putting it on the tax bill. And we don't want it on the tax bill.
So is that one of the reasons? That's one of the reasons we're negative, though.
No, it's again the negative for the TIF is on paper. It's just saying that we've got obligations that we're not done with the TIF.
How would I be able to get? And I mean, you've got it yearly and what have you. But I'm looking at something that looks like a checkbook. How can I find something on the TIFs that shows exactly what's paid out and where it goes?
Again,
I mean, do you have it?
If you go on your computer to Comptroller's office, and that's where you put your index number in. If you go to the bottom of the page, you'll see it'll say TIFs. There's 2 TIFs, and you just click on both.
Here, it's like
And
section
it's-
3.3.
So you just want.
Yeah, but
It's
is it over a
It's a
certain
rolling
amount of
balance.
money?
I'm sorry?
Is it over a certain?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Everything.
This TIF report accounts for everything.
Yeah, it has everything on here. It's
It has everything.
$100
But it doesn't have it back from the beginning of time. It only goes
No,
back to
Yes, because,
a
yeah.
certain time.
With Pat Hogan's grants, does this come out of the TIFs?
Point made.
I'm sorry?
It's all the grants that Pat was talking about. Is this coming out of the TIFs too? The grants might be a great
Well,
thing.
the grants that Patrick talked about would be potentially funded out of the new TIF, presuming
Okay.
presuming that we move
Now,
forward.
it's not
that we create the TIF,
retroactive, like
and that the board approves.
we have
the allocated
businesses that just
money
put
in our budget
signs
to do
up,
that.
but we're not gonna retroact, like Bailey's just put that
Are we
sign
going to
up.
ask them to take it
Yeah,
down?
no, not take it down, but retroact. Now, how about,
That was about 4.
I brought this up at a meeting before. Now, we pay to have all these buildings tore down along Park Avenue. They're empty lots. I suggested we just go and we buy up these empty lots and let Tinley own them and let's fix them up, clean them up.
There's a couple of these that we're probably
But
going
now I
to do
was
that.
told, well, we don't do that because it's not our property. I'm like, well, that's what
There's
Pat's
a couple of them
talking.
who probably will do that.
That's what Pat's talking with these grants is to clean up the properties that we just tore everything down. I was
And
told
we could use money. for
several
that.
months ago.
Obviously, I don't want to hold on to those. I
Right.
want those to develop, just like
If Tim, now,
the
why
mental
doesn't
health center
Tinley
needs
buy
to
up
develop.
the empty properties and open it up to developers, make it easy?
Well, we tore down that house on Oak Park Avenue,
Yeah,
across from the
Rogers.
subway. Across from the subway. Yeah, where Rogers
But
Harrison
who owns
owns
it?
it. The owners are dead.
No, doesn't what you?
There's,
I thought they're kids.
the owners are dead. There are no owners.
Somebody mistake.
But we tore down the property. It's now sitting vacant. We have a lien against the property for our demolition costs, which means that, however that property ever eventually gets settled, I don't know what's going to happen because, again, the owners are dead.
Okay, now if somebody buys
We,
that property,
we could go through the courts and foreclose on our lien and acquire the property. Where we already have an established program for creating the rear yard parking along Oak Park Avenue, like behind Ed and Joe's and behind the Springford Hall and the building just to the north of that. We've created this off-street parking off of Oak Park Avenue. That process eliminates curb cuts in the street, so it helps the traffic flow better. It also creates opportunity that there's available parking for downtown. We want that in the big scheme of things. We want to connect that parking by Springford Hall with Ed and Joe's all the way through. Okay. This vacant lot provides us an opportunity to continue that program. Do we want to own the entire property for parking? Maybe not. Maybe we want to take the front piece and combine it with other properties for another Springford Hall type building or something facing the street, but again, create the parking environment behind. So there's reasons for us to maybe acquire that property, assemble property for a future development, but that's yet to be determined.
now there's people out there that are looking to grab properties up. I know you guys probably talk about it. I know Brad's on top of this sort of thing. I'm telling Pat and Dave here, I mean, go ahead and get these properties before somebody grabs them, then they bend us over a barrel and they hang on to them forever. Then we're at their mercy to make them the developer of these properties. That's what's been going on in Tinley. You've got these, you know what I'm talking, and I don't want to say it.
We've talked about
we've got these
we've talked about the one that's
people-
closest to home to you, the apartment building next to you.
Yeah,
That's another one that we'd love to
that's
do something
rat
with.
infested building there.
But again, from a bigger picture,
It's empty.
that's another property that we maybe
It's a
wanna
12-unit
acquire.
apartment building that's sitting empty,
We've talked about it,
falling
Dave.
down, right across
No, I
from
know.
where I'm building.
I know, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
What's
And
the
I-
sense in building new apartments when we got there? But I'm telling you, there's people looking and buying these properties, and they're holding the Village of Tinley Park over a barrel, because now they're developers. And we don't go and take them on. I'm not talking about homes, businesses, I'm talking about the vacant, empty properties. Okay, now somebody grabs that one, and I believe somebody already did, okay, from what I heard. And now,
I don't think so.
No, and I would say on a targeted basis, I think that makes sense. I don't really want to become, frankly, a large landlord downtown.
Nothing's
Because,
gonna get-
no, because you take them off the tax rolls, we as the village could perhaps be sitting on a property that is non-productive for years and years, and that's your money that we use to spend that. So I hear what you're saying. I just think it has to be targeted, and it's got to be something that.
well, I'm just talking
Yeah.
even at South Street, I mean, he's been holding on to that property, and even North Street, they're holding on to that property, and they got us back into a
for
corner.
11 years.
The North
They
Street
got us
should be in
back
a
into
Harmony
corner.
Square.
That's empty property. It's not like we're taking over someone's business. We're not taking over their home. Just say, hey, can't get the financing, buy them out, get some developer in there that can actually get the job.
Yeah, because
We've been,
South Street
this is
is,
15, 20 years we've been dealing with this. Every single year, we say it's okay, build it, they come back and say, okay, we had to put in a pond. Before that, we had to change the
Yeah.
building code. Before that, what was that, 15 years ago, what was the excuse?
right now
Here
we're
we
gonna
go,
do it
and here I
TIF.
find myself sitting
him.
through this meeting here.
Well, no,
And I
we're not doing
know
the TIF for
it's
him.
kind of-
Let's make sure that we understand
I know
that.
it.
This proposed new TIF is not for that. It's
I
for,
talked to his loan officer.
If we were doing it for what
Okay,
Pat wanted,
Yeah.
we have elected
We-
officials that want to see development occur on North Street and South Street. We cannot accomplish that during the remaining life of the existing TIF.
That's
We need
fine.
more time.
We'll work with you on that.
More
but
time
we're-
is achieved through.
It's
creating
every
new
single
TIF.
time that we say, yeah, we do these things, and then they.
Well,
find
here's what I would say about South Street.
Something else.
You know, believe me, we'll know pretty soon.
Well, that's
you know,
what
they
we're
said,
supposed
instead
to
of
take.
that
I was
deal-
in the meetings with you a year and a half ago.
I
asked
know,
the same
I know.
question.
This
Does
is
he have
a
financing?
really difficult deal. It's challenging.
Oh, I know.
But here's the thing, and again, I'm just going to say, put aside whether you like apartments or not. The reality, just please listen to me. Just everybody is positive on Patrick's programs.
Yeah,
We need to generate revenue from something to have money for those programs.
Create them.
And that's, I mean, that's what it's just, yes,
Okay,
yeah.
so
There's also
I completely understand that. We need sources of revenue. But what we did,
Yeah.
Patrick, I've been here my whole life, we
Yeah.
tore down all these buildings. And that, you see the EAVs go down, not bringing in no money from these buildings, expecting them to get built.
But you weren't having anything
But
coming
you've got
in from
one
those buildings either,
developer-
well,
We only got,
before we tore them down.
yeah, you got certain, you got a developer buy one piece of property here, all of a sudden he's a developer for the whole block, because he owns that one property. He's got us.
But we don't
Now
know
it's
how
happening.
to property.
But
It's
there's
happened-
also
I know
Central
it's
Middle
happened
School
in 3
that can,
different
like,
places
assess
on
it, nothing,
Park
'cause we
Avenue
own
now, and they know they're doing it, and they're knowing they're buying these properties because they're the developer. Now we have to go.
Well, we're meeting with the Chicago Southland EDC because they're part of that land bank
Right.
program.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out how we could, if that's something that we can tap into to expand it here to do what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Because
I
it's like with us, you don't want to take the risk of us owning all this land, but if we get part of some other nonprofit that does that.
But if you own them properties, you could do beautification.
Oh, no, I get it. I mean, we can control it. My fear is getting the kickback that, why are you guys trying to play developers?
We're not, we're just.
One, that's, I know, but that
The
could be an argument.
developers
Or you're
are
playing
buying these
us, or
up
we're gonna play.
and
Well, I'm just
holding
saying
this
it
over
could
the
be-
barrel.
Yeah, I
They're
get
seeing
that.
how much they could get from
I
us
get
out
that.
of our
I know.
TIFs.
Yeah,
I mean, this is, we're talking, this guy's getting, I got it right here, minimally $11 million from us. Okay, that's not even including the pond, okay, that he's getting.
Yeah.
That makes him instantly, as soon as we say go with it, instantly $11 million in his pocket. Out of a project that cost, what, 42 million? So you minus 11 million from that?
Well, the pond
And
is
then-
for
and then
more
he's-
than his project, but.
Well, we're not including the pond. And then we might even be giving him 50% of the taxes that he brings in back. At least that was the old proposal. Now that we don't know what's gonna go on, that's up to you guys. But
Let's just
Jesus
cut the
Christ,
apartments
I
in
mean,
half and we'd be there.
Here's just, and I know
That's
this
you
is a
guys.
small group, and I think this is kind of good, this feedback, but maybe, we can maybe just, I know Wilma, you've been trying to talk, so maybe we could let you finish and then kind of just, if there's other questions, just pass it around, just. go
Right,
ahead,
and
so.
you might need to get back to me on this, Brad. Before we get the new TIF, if we get the new TIF, the bonds have to be paid off. How much is outstanding that'll have to be paid off, do you know? Or if you could just let me know?
The bonds that exist for that North Street realignment project, I want to say off the top of my head, it's somewhere around $180,000.
Oh my gosh.
Jesus, you almost put me in the hospital, dude.
$180,000, give or take.
Yeah,
In
what
that-
about
in that
Main
neighborhood.
Street? 'Cause
But understand that if we collapse Main Street and create the new TIF, we'll just transfer that debt service over to the new TIF.
I didn't think you could do that.
Yes, we can do that.
I thought any outstanding bonds had to be paid before you.
No.
We can transfer the debt. Just like if I've got money in the bank, in the check.
The bondholders
checking
don't
account.
care. Yeah, they're.
Yeah, the bondholder, all the bondholders care for is that they get paid.
Right.
They don't care where the money comes from.
And
They
I
just want-
do.
They just want to get paid.
Sorry.
But just like I can transfer, if I've got money in the checking account and I can transfer that to an adjacent TIF, I can do the same thing with the bonds. I can transfer that obligation.
Yeah, and in general, only because I can't make it tomorrow, I have my great nephew. Will there be special meetings on South Street for citizens advisory? Like, I don't think any of us are against apartments going there. It's the high density that's going there. I don't think it's not good for our area.
I mean, there's
Well,
going to be
is there
Is there
plans,
gonna be meetings?
there's going to be, I'm sure, multiple planning commission meetings before it gets to the board, yeah.
I wanted it before we even get to the planning.
Brad, one more question about old
Because
Central
Paul is
School.
working on
Do we
it.
have that paid off? I know when we bought it, I have it right here, that we paid him $350,000 and another $1 million after 5 years. Then at the end of the TIF, up to $3 million tops. Now we're coming up to, that depends on if we get enough money in the TIFs. How does that work, seeing that we're renewing the TIF then? Or did we already pay off the $3 million?
No, we did not, because again, if you
Right.
I don't know what you're looking at. You're probably looking.
That's probably what you.
You're looking at the, I
Yeah.
believe, either out of the TIF report.
So basically, the old central school, we don't have that paid off.
So the agreement with the school district
Yeah.
was $350 up front,
Right.
$1 million after 5 years, and then they were supposed to receive 30% of any increment generated from the property over the life of the TIF to a maximum of $3 million. Well, we've continued to own the property tax exempt, so it's not generated any additional monies.
Right, so what happens?
So potentially at the end of the TIF, they could get nothing.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
They could get nothing more than the
But now what
$1.3 million
happens
that
if
they've
they
already
extend
got.
this or redo it? Does that redo
We would,
the time where we owe them $1 million something, or? It doesn't.
that's to be determined.
Okay.
I mean, we made a commitment to, like I said, the board made a commitment to them, to give them ultimately $3 million over the life of the
Depending
TIF.
on-
It's,
We've talked with
We've
them,
talked-
just to
we've
be
talked about the idea that
transparent,
it-
we've talked with them
Yeah.
independently, and so they're aware of it. So-
Yeah,
yeah, and there's a possibility that
Yeah.
that obligation, the additional monies, could be transferred into the new TIF.
Yeah, it's no big deal, we're just trying to.
Right, yeah.
Hey, we
Right.
we kind of want. Now, yeah, that's okay, it's not a tough question.
And just, I will tell you, the meetings with the school districts, and we're still on a very general stage though, is that I think they want to hear details, but I think they understand that there needs to be a assessed value growth now. And that's going to benefit them. No one is thrilled about the fact that we have to do TIFs to do, but I think they have an understanding.
They understand that it's a.
Yeah, so this is not a situation where I think we're adversarial with the school districts.
I think everybody understands TIFs, at least in this small group here.
Yeah.
We're not against them. I can see the benefit of TIFs if they're done right. But just enrich one developer with our tax dollars, I don't know, man.
It's not what it's about.
I know in the long run it's not.
Yeah.
It's not, but.
If
I
the
just-
only thing that happened with South Street, that would not be
I just wish I would
successful.
have known to buy that little sliver of land one time ago and sit on it.
Yeah.
You know?
What is it, you didn't do that?
Okay, I think Mike, did you?
Yeah, look. Okay. This is my whole thing. I'm gonna go and add on to this tomorrow, but, okay, let's go back to Patrick's programs. Decent programs. They're reasonable programs. In theory, if people could get their head out of the TIF box, which I literally don't know if that's capable, but I'm gonna try, or I'll go down fighting. But you could redirect all the money from the slots that people can't handle, but they make a ton of money, and you can go and make a fund out of that for Patrick's programs, instead of just tip, because that just seems to be the modus operandi here. Because I don't care how you guys want to say it, but that pond was to benefit at most 3 properties: South Street, North Street, Central Street, okay?
No,
Spin it whatever way you want,
there's more than
those are the ones that are gonna benefit.
There's more than that.
But there's about 8 acres that it was going to
And you don't
benefit
need to shout.
downtown Tinley, which we only needed 3 acres of a pond, but we built 8 acres of pond, so there was 5 extra acres of pond, and that was basically.
Okay,
we
theoretically, pandering if they ever
theoretically,
redevelop the land, yes, they would benefit as well, so maybe 4, okay? So the point of the matter is that please don't tell me that money has not already been expended for potentially any developer of South Street, because you already have in the legacy pond, okay, Pandora Pond, whatever, Freedom Pond, I can barely kayak in a pond because it's like this deep. The point of the matter is money was expended that will benefit a developer. Now, maybe it's not a direct check to whoever that is, but please do not tell me, do not insult our intelligence, because that is directly to benefit, not directly, like literally a check, but who else really benefits? That's all I want to say. So like I said, going forward, I would like it, and I think I even ran this by Trustee Panito, that potentially you could redirect the funds, for programs like what Patrick is pointing out, which I think is actually a pretty decent idea. But let's do it in a more open form, like take the money from the slot machine program, do it that way. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, how about that?
So again,
That's a
I
good
would-
idea.
I'll make 2 points there.
Go ahead.
First of all, slot machine, the video gaming money
Doesn't
does not generate that much
It does.
at this point in time. And it's growing, yes, but it's not generating it doesn't even generate the $350,000 that's needed to the program that he's suggested here. And we've already earmarked that money to support things like the Harmony Square and downtown activities. So you can't spend the money twice.
We're just trying to figure out a source of revenue besides TIF for you.
Right.
Is that what we're doing? Okay, so if I can increase the revenue from the machines by raising the annual fee from 1,000, giving the first machine for 1,000, second machine 2,000, the third machine 3, fourth, and the fifth machine is 5. So instead of we collecting 5,000 for machines, we collect 15,000 if you want 5 machines. If they don't need the 5 machines, they'll know it. They'll just go down to 2 or 3 or whatever they need. Most of these places, there's someone making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year off these machines. And I don't know if you guys talked about it in the last couple of years, but we bring it up every once in a while. Raise the fees on machines, use it for Pat's program.
I don't know if we've done a recent study of what.
We're not going to, I said it's another place where they're holding us over a barrel. We're not going to build in Tinley. We're not going to start our business unless you let us have the machines. So fine, let's raise the prices.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to get on the next ballot and let the voters vote to see if we're going to vote the machines are out, in or out. Okay? And if they don't do something about it. So either they're going to be gone, because I'm pretty sure the voters will vote them out. We'll get on the ballot, let the voters decide either they're gone, or you fix the problem.
Yeah, I don't, I've done a comparison lately what our fees are for machines compared to others, but I mean, but the big picture issue, and again, I'm just trying to outline the issue, is that the reason we're not doing the TIF for Patrick's programs. I mean, I'm just saying that that's one of the benefits of the reason.
We'd feel better if that's where they're going.
Well, I understand. But the reason why the village is doing, why the village board is doing, is to create new development downtown to bring more residential. I will tell you, one of the things, and this is going to come up at our plaza meeting, one of the things that we found Lakota did when they were looking at downtowns is the amount of people that we have living and working in downtown Oak Park, or Tinley Park, Oak Park Avenue. The amount, compared to some of the very successful towns, we should make sure that chart. And that's what this is really about. The board is trying to develop the downtown, get more people, which is going to help the businesses be more successful. Doesn't mean we have to help the developments with incentives and helping them with the pond. Yeah, and again, the fight about apartments or whatever, that fight's going to happen. But the fact is, to get more business downtown, to make our downtown more successful, we need more people living there.
We need more business.
We need business
That's
for
how
us
We need to
grow,
have
too.
people living down there to make more.
I live a few blocks.
Okay, so here's
And
my,
yet
We need to
I,
give you a big raise so you can
well,
spend
you
more.
could have.
Okay.
well, we need more places, no doubt.
Yeah,
Yes.
because
Oh, yes.
remember I told you, I love going to Frankfurt because I love to walk and go into all the shops. To do that here, it's only over by Creative Cakes. There's only that one little strip mall to walk.
But why is it that the businesses aren't doing
It
that?
seems like Pat's getting a
Because there's
grab
not
on
people
things.
down there. You gotta have.
They could chase it out of
businesses are-
town, Dave. They could
But I would
the small
go if
businesses
I
could
chose
chase
a
it.
place to walk.
You have to
Well,
walk
here's,
the
yeah, that's what
Yeah.
the thing that concerns me a little bit. Well,
Yeah.
one, about if we're gonna help somebody who cannot get bank financing to do something, I'd like to understand why. What is the bank saying? I mean, seriously, because if the bank is not buying into this,
Every
they
time.
are, I know they're holding back, but we should understand why. Is it a bad, do they feel it's a bad investment? Do they feel it's the wrong thing for their, why? I'd like to know.
Well, and again,
It's risky.
so when that project and when all the projects come up that need, we'll have that discussion, but it's not that they can't get financing. It's basically there's a gap in terms of what they need, and that's where TIFs come in. I mean, this is what TIFs all over the state of Illinois are for. A developer says, I can get $5 million to do a project. To make it successful, I need $8 million, and just throwing numbers out. I mean, that's what the purpose of the TIF is. It's to essentially.
But this is where we could go negative, and if it doesn't make it, we have to cover all that we gave that person, right?
Well, we have to make sure we have a project that's going to be successful,
Like
okay, and that's going to
pre-selling.
generate.
But they're also,
Yeah.
the way that we're setting up these agreements is so that it's going to be, they don't make any money unless they make money. Like, so if there's no increment, they're not getting anything.
So, but I thought we would, so we wouldn't owe them, we sign a
Oh,
contract.
yeah, we sign it, we do a contract, they start to build, and it doesn't create any increment, they don't get any money.
It's only based on what they make on the site.
So we would not go negative in that TIF over that, okay.
No, and
No,
again,
on the
and
parcel,
again,
no.
don't,
Okay, I get it, okay, that's good, I get that. That's good.
believe me, we're never gonna spend more money than what we've got in a TIF. We're not
Okay.
gonna go negative.
Long
Paper
term. I
under
got
the TIF statutes for determining whether there is surplus that needs to be refunded back to the other taxing bodies, you do an analysis that says, what other obligations do you have outstanding?
Okay.
And when you throw those other obligations in there, if it's negative, obviously there's no leftover money to be shared.
Okay.
Okay?
But if he
So
can't
that
get
negative,
finance-
so again, that negative is okay, but I'm not gonna spend more money than what it's got.
So we would not, okay, that's good, that's good.
Yeah, the only way that we would do that is for like infrastructure, for like public, like if we were gonna do the roads or the plaza,
Yeah.
build the plaza and then reimburse for the plaza. If you're gonna do the road, do the road, reimburse
That
after
goes
that.
first, yeah.
That's-
I'm okay with
the
that.
convention center.
I mean,
At
that's-
least it's ours.
I mean, yeah, exactly. The convention center is a good example. When that TIF started, there was nothing there. And we wanted to build the convention center, and we issued bonds to build the convention center. Now there, to use the gambling term, we were, like playing craps, we were betting on the come that there would be increment generated by the time that we would have to pay that debt service. So we were betting that other activity was going to happen and that we could have enough funds to pay that debt service. That turned out to be correct because we didn't do that just seat of the pants. I mean, there was some analysis and science behind that said, and believe me,
Okay.
this
I
is,
get you, yeah.
I don't spend into the hole. And so when we did this analysis, it's like, I want to have a pretty good chance that we're going to have that money available. And we did analysis that said, yeah, there's a chance of about like this that I'm not going to be able to make that debt service. And that when that first payment came due, that I had to pay out of the increment was there, and then some. So I had no worries about making that debt service payment. And so, the legwork, the analysis that we did in advance was, it was all for good reason, so that in fact when those bonds came due, that we would have the money to pay for them.
And it's one of the reasons that development is important. I want to see it happen. I just don't want to see us financing people or things I'm hearing, that are,
Well,
I just want it to be
Don't
done
want
right.
high
it's like the development agreements will go in front of the ECC first, all the development agreements, and probably because it's downtown, are probably going to go in front of Main Street too, before it even gets to a committee. So,
I mean, the traffic, how many people avoid Oak Park Avenue as it is now for traffic? And you want to put 160 something units there? I mean, I can't even imagine it. I live on the next street. I live on 68th Court. When the Blue Iguana was on there, I didn't know he had a business there for a couple of years when I got a wrong number from him. And I said, well, where are you located? And he goes, Oak Park Avenue. I was like,
It's crazy, but hey,
I could have seen it from my front yard. I mean, really,
How many
the
square feet is
I
South
know
Street?
it takes me a while just to turn,
About 300?
just down Oak Park.
South Street is about 3 acres in total.
Would go around because I live on the.
I don't know
Yeah, I don't.
how that breaks down in square footage, but it's about 3 acres in total.
Yeah, that's the thing for me. I need to see the visual. I just don't get where all this is going to fit like
Brookside
nicely.
Glen.
I feel like we're going to cram a bunch of crap down there.
Oh,
I just feel like,
the
you know,
residents,
I've
I'm
seen
not
it.
sure. Brookside Glen as a
You know,
whole
that-
is
Oh, no, no,
hundreds,
just
is
the new one.
thousands of acres.
Oh, they do one of it.
That I don't know.
I don't get it, I see shops, I see all these other things, that's not gonna fit.
I think that would have been part of the presentation with the
Brookside
plan
Glen
commission.
residents.
Oh, the Brookside Glen?
The
What's
site,
the
the site,
layout?
the size of
know.
the site, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you can ask Paul.
But it would have, I think that would have been part of the
Yeah, I think it's.
presentation with the plan commission.
Yeah.
The other thing with TIFs is just getting the money to our services and, because of all this money goes to development and stuff. What about the money that would have normally gone to public services, like the schools, the police, all the other things? how do we cover all that? You're gonna add all these people, we better be adding a lot more police.
Well, the schools, there's a formula for that, for them to get offset.
Yeah.
Presuming that the development had received financial assistance through the TIF.
Right.
I mean, if there's a development that occurs on its own and we didn't provide any financial assistance to it, then if it produced kids, the school district is SOL. But if we're providing assistance, there's a formula that allows them to get a share of the TIF monies to support those new kids that were created by it. So they're not left high and dry.
It's just that for the police and the public works and all that.
Well, that's on us, and that's part of,
We need
again,
them.
Right, well, but that's the thing, instead of, but it then comes to us, because now we're gonna have to cover them somewhere. So if we took the money that the tax is created, or the new development is created, it would go to the public services, but because it went to people to develop, because they, for whatever reason, now we have to cover the extra police. You know what I'm saying? It
Not
should
all,
come
not
out
all
like that.
agreements. A lot of the agreements are only like 2 years, and if it's 23 years, then you're talking 13 years of surplus to do whatever.
And again, I wish there was a study that there's some numbers that could show this, but if you, let's say you bring another 160 units, or whatever the number is downtown, those people, I mean, there's more money going to be spent at Ed and Joe's and all those places. That's going to generate more sales tax. So it's not
Well, I can actually
it's not just the
say
property
that
tax.
without a consultant. So what you do is you say, if you got this many people, the average income that's around here, take the average income from the amount of people that are inside that place and say, okay, in our area, we're more likely to spend this much money on certain things, and you can do the sales tax off of that. So you can do an economic model, an economic impact study.
It's a good
without a
question.
consultant, based on what they're going to spend in our area.
Yeah.
So we can do that right now.
Well, I mean, there's nothing more I want to see than a bunch of new little places up and down Oak Park Avenue.
That's a chicken or the egg thing,
Yeah,
because
like,
it's like,
I don't know.
we want more stores, and I want to get more stores down there, but they're like, we need the traffic, and so that's why they go next to malls and everything else, because there's already people going there. So if we don't have a destination, which the train station is one, but downtown needs to be walkable so that there's enough, besides restaurants, that you can leave the restaurant and go to the
We
next
have
place.
residents, we want to do it, but there's nothing there.
But that's the thing, because they track the sales tax.
Right.
It's total
It's
chicken
a
the
chicken.
egg.
Yeah.
So if
The
I'm talking to
businesses,
somebody-
I will tell you, if the businesses were here, I mean, they will say, we need this because we need more traffic to make our business more successful.
It's like the
It's
hotels,
just-
like
it's-
we're getting
yeah.
more hotels because
Yeah.
hotels are successful. If you get successful retail, you'll get more retail. And there's a reason Woodman's is looking to go right behind Target. They're trying to tap into that. So that you have to have, you have to have some success for people to want to tap into.
So,
Aldi's still packed in right now.
I'm going to do.
so I heard a couple things and then we could, just some maybe we can, some data in terms of explaining how well the TIFs are doing outside of the whole TIF report. I think that's one of the things we heard tonight. Looking at some of the vacant properties, can we do more with ownership? We want to know how much was paid off in bonds. We'll get that number. When South Street comes, we definitely will explain. The financing will be explained.
Yeah, we want to be a part of it.
And what's that?
We want to be a part of it before
Yeah.
we start picketing.
Well, I think it's Patrick. No pickets about it.
Please don't picketing.
I still have my sign. So
Yeah, okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Got rid of mine.
And then you're going to get the number of acres. Who asked about Brookside? You were asking, or somebody? Yeah. You'll get my public.
Is there anything in the budget for hiring more staff for your economics and your marketing department? I mean, I feel like there's so much to do here for such a few people. How are they going to do this all? You know what I mean? How do you get out there and how do you?
There's going to be some discussion, committee meeting next Tuesday about marketing.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like, that's a big part of it, is getting it out there.
There's a lot to do. We have a lean staff. I mean, Patrick's just got a new person, but that's on business retention, but not kidding. We operate leanly.
I know,
Yeah,
but
we do.
to me, I
Yeah,
feel like,
so-
when they were doing the
Yeah.
staffing study, they're looking at who's around us. We're in a whole different place than the people around us, right? They're already done. I feel like we need to have more people in those areas for a while to get us to where we need to be. Then, you can move them maybe somewhere else over time into different areas that you need, but I
We have
feel
a lot
like
going on
you're not
compared
gonna
to our
get it done with
comparables.
just a lean staff. you know, a lot of, you know, part-time, it's hard, that's a lot to do.
A lot of big projects.
Yeah.
That's enough to do.
It's sad. I mean, I just feel like that's, you know, you gotta have people, place
Well-
to do things too.
I'm debating whether to say this, but I know this is,
Don't say it.
yeah, no, why sometimes we have to hire outside people. when- I know,
Yeah,
yeah,
but you don't if you had full, if you, I don't agree with this. I agree
forbid we
ownership
actually
of
find
people
staff
that
that actually
have
can do their
permanent
job.
positions, they're gonna work harder for you than somebody that's just a
I know,
temporary
but sometimes
person.
you need a specialty, but anyway, fair enough, fair point, so,
Then you wind up with life and.
Thanks for
coming out
tonight.
thank you.